Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Britball Roundtable. I'm by myself tonight. Well, I'm not. I've got GB coaches with us, but no Mike here tonight. He couldn't make it. He's on a lazy day, so I do apologise. But we've got a jam-packed show anyways, talking about DB, so no one's here for me. So I'm going to introduce our first guest, Pete. Welcome to the stream.
Hello, Adam. Long time no see.
I know, mate. It's like I haven't seen you in forever. How's it going?
It's good to catch up, isn't it?
Mate, you're here more than me.
I'm delighted to be here, as always. You know I love Britball and I love being on the show. You can't keep me off it. But as always, we had a lot of really good feedback from the DB talks from Technique Tuesdays that we've done. So we're once again hoping to help any of our Britball community out there that are interested in DB work.
Now, if you haven't seen the Technique Tuesday or Fundamental Friday videos, they are on the BAFCA page. They're also on the Britballing page. So if you've not seen them, go check them out. Little plug there. Get with plugs in as usual, Pete. Gotta love that.
What pro?
I know, pro, mate. You know, they're getting professional. We don't even need Mike anymore. Mike, you're not coming back. Next up, we've got Wilf.
Hey, Adam. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going, man? Thanks for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So, Wilf, you've not been on the show here before, so do you want to give a little introduction of where you're from and where'd you coach?
Yeah,
your position in the GB squad.
So I'm from Gloucester originally. Coach at the University of Birmingham, and I'm actually coaching with Pete at GB Students defensive backs.
Love it. Thanks for coming on, mate. I honestly do appreciate you coming out there. Next up, we've got Will. Hey, man, how's it going?
Yeah, good, man. Yeah, good to see you. It seems like it's been ages since I spoke to you.
It has been ages since I've seen you, mate. I'm looking forward to coming down and seeing you again. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Always good to have you down.
So, Will, for others that don't know who you are, do you want to give a little introduction of your local team and also your position in the GB setup?
Yeah, so my local team is the Yorkshire Academy Assassins. I'm the head coach of their under-16s team. I'm also the DB's positional coach for Leeds Beckett University, also known as Carnegie, and then I'm the under-17s DB's coach.
Perfect, man. Thanks for coming on. I really do appreciate you being here.
Well,
and mate, I can't wait to see you again. I'm not gonna lie. We'll talk about that a different time. I can't wait to see you. Next up, we've got Duncan.
Hey, Adam, how's it going?
Hey, man, how's it going? You all right?
Yeah,
just
good.
A same little spiel for you, man. Like a little bit of background on where you're coaching, things like that, and your position in the GB setup.
Yeah, absolutely. So, club football, I coach with the Blitz adult men's team. I'm defensive coordinator there, and I'm also the defensive coordinator for the GB men's adults team.
Perfect, man. So we should have like a wealth of knowledge in here today. I'm hoping. I mean, I'm no expert at DBs. I'm not gonna deny that. And to be fair, I'm not really an expert at anything. So we're gonna be on to a winner here. So I hope you guys are all keen and ready to go. First topic that we're gonna go with, guys, is I'll come to Pete first for this. So we'll probably try and keep it in the order. Oh, Pete's taking. Look at him. How unprofessional. I'm gonna pull you off stream in a minute, Pete. Look at that. So what's the first thing that you're gonna teach a new DB? So this isn't something like, oh, you must teach this. It's just what your go-to is. You've just had a new guy turn up, wants to play DB. What you going with? Everyone's might be different here.
First thing I want to see is how they can move. So as always, it's the cliche is to get them to run backwards, but it's really we can teach them how to improve upon that. But I'm looking for flexibility in the hips, flexibility in the ankles. The old one about the wide receiver coach is sending you across the guys that can't catch the ball. That's just sticks in my craw. I'm looking for.
Mike mentioned that last week, by the way. I'm just putting that out there. He mentioned that last week.
Defensive backs are great athletes, and so what we need are people who can move. We can teach the tackling, and we can teach the reads, but we've got to see that they've got that flexion in their hips. And their flexion in their ankles, which means that they can get into those positions and they can move smoothly around the field. So that's, for me, that's the first thing I want to look at. And then after that, then we can teach some of the other, the stuff around formations and responsibilities.
Perfect. What about you, Wilf? What would you go with?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think once we've sorry, was that Wilf or Will? Apologies.
I will go Wilf. We'll keep it in order of the screen. We'll go Will. You're going to be last. Sorry, man.
No, no worries. Save the best.
We'll change the order later. Don't worry.
So yeah, just going back off what Pete's saying, making sure they've got an ability to play the position even at a kind of a basic level. But from there, I think from a technical standpoint, stance and start is probably where we start with probably every position that we coach. Getting them into a kind of a comfortable stance that they can use, every play, something they can be familiar with and kind of find comfort in. And then, stance. So that probably depend on what you're teaching, whether it's kind of a back pedal or a shuffle or a scooch. But for me, probably a back pedal. And those are probably the first two things that I teach in EDB.
Perfect.
Can I just interrupt there, Adam?
You want another go?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
No, Will's made just a really good point. Just in terms of stance, it's one of those things that when you explain what a stance should look like to a rookie, and even just get them to copy what you're doing and what you're demonstrating, 9 times out of 10 they get it hideously wrong. So one of the things for me is I just try and get them to be natural in the initial point and just get them to, I ask them just line up as if you would be running forward, and we'll take it from there.
No, I think that's a good point, to be fair, because running backward, it's not natural, like. So, mass respect to those DBs. I can do it. I know I've got a few bumps on my head when I've tried demonstrating and things in training. So, I'm not a fan. I can't do it. I'm not built for it, to be fair. Well, Dunk, what about you? What's the first thing that you would look at?
Yeah, I think obviously what Pete and Wilf have said so far is good progression. I think I was going to say something similar to what Pete just said, actually, is that when you're assessing that range of movement and what people do naturally, I think that's really important, because I think it's very easy to say, okay, here's how you change direction, here's how you should plant your feet, etc., etc. But often you can slow somebody down by doing that, and they do it as fast as they need to and as fast as you want them to, maybe slightly differently. So when you're teaching plant steps, like do you T-step or do you put your foot straight back in the ground? To be honest, I let people do what they want to do. If somebody says, I've got no idea what I'm doing, how do you want me to do it? I actually say, put your foot, turn the toes the way you want to go, and just put your foot in the ground that way rather than T-stepping. But that's just me, and you can do it both ways. But I think what people do naturally is important. But then once you've done kind of that stance and movement stuff, I would just put 1 or 2 keys, like read keys, into that progression, because there's so much you can focus on a football field, that give them a job and tell them what that one key thing is to doing the job well, and then that just gets them keeps introducing guys into the sport.
Yeah. And Will, what about you? You got anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think there's going to be a lot of similar answers going on tonight for some of these questions. But yeah, agility is obviously key to the position. So, that's what we're looking for. But in terms of first thing, as in, brand new rookie walks through the doors and, we want to have a look, then obviously once again, the back pedal. I also like to do the old classic, the W drill, where they have to go back and then explode forwards, because as Duncan was saying, you get to see a little more about what their natural ability. We're asking them to do something they don't necessarily know how to do it the correct way, but they just get an idea of what the movements are like of a DB. And just following up on something Pete said, I always want my DBs to be able to catch. And I always spend 5 minutes of every session at least doing catching. I hate all this back down stuff. Geez, if you get your hands on that ball, I want it in your possession, and I want you running back, the other way. So we always spend, whether you're a rookie or you've been playing the position for donkey's years, I want you to be able to catch a ball. So that's something we always work on as well.
See, I love that. I absolutely love that. Sorry, Pete, I'll let you go now, but I just wanted to show some appreciation for getting DBs to catch, man. I love it. Love it. I'd celebrate a pick more than I'd celebrate a first down. I'm sorry.
Just following on from some Duncan said, I was talking many years ago at a convention when I was specifically talking about 180 turns for defense backs, for cornerbacks. I was talking about the differences doing chop steps all the way around, or T-cuts. And there was a 180 flip hip that I'd learned about. And I was just talking away to it. And then a coach came up to me from, I think it would have been the Olympians at the time, and he just said, "Coach, I just tell my guys to turn around." And it was like one of those Zen moments where I went, I'm making this far too complicated. Yes, I just, whatever the guy needs to do to get around quickly, that's what works for him,
See,
So
I think
we need to stop overcoaching it, I think, sometimes.
I love
Yeah,
that.
If a player needs to think, they're slowing down. They've got to just do it. They've got to react and allow that speed to come through.
Yeah, absolutely. And if guys are having trouble doing it, like they're only able to go at like a 120 angle, then you can start to coach them. And actually, one of the things that I quite like is if you're looking to turn to the right, the first step that helps you turn is actually with your left foot. And you as you step back with your left foot, you kind of start to point that toe in the way you want to go, because that just starts to open your hips up even more for when you turn around. So guys that are having trouble getting enough turn, that's what I try to say. It's almost like as you backpedal, you're pushing off with the foot on the opposite side. It just gets the turn started like half a step earlier.
So here's a question for you, because I know, Pete, you mentioned about wide receiver coaches just sending guys over there saying these can't catch, go and have a go over there. So how would you identify a DB? So a new guy turns up at training. There's yourselves are arguing, saying we'd like him to try out as a DB. You've got other guys arguing, I'd like him to try out as a wide receiver. What would make you say, I want this guy to try as a DB? How would you identify that?
Speed.
Well, if the wide receiver coach wants him, then I want him just enough.
Yes, Bravo will. Yeah. Yeah, no, for me, Adam, speed in the first instance for corners, because that's uncoachable. And secondly, if it's a safety, I want somebody with aggression, who's not afraid to tackle and who wants to get involved in the game. And if I've got aggression, they're going to safety, and I've got speed, they're going to corner, and I'm done. I'll coach the rest.
Love that. Anyone want to add anything to that, or is that just like in a nutshell? That's it, right there.
Yeah,
for me, it's
just general agility. I think, like because you're playing on the reactive side of the ball, like that speed and agility. Because I think guys that are fast in a straight line, put them at receiver and tell them to run a fade. But we want guys that are quick in every direction and can change direction quickly as well.
Yeah.
It's keeping up with those receivers, man. That try to do those double moves. If you can do that, just
I
next level, isn't it?
I had a player for 4 years, Jamie Clark, who was only about 5'6", and he was with East Kilbride as well. And Jamie, every team that saw him just wanted to throw the ball at him. And, he had like double-figure picks every season. He was phenomenal. He could jump. He could keep pace with every receiver. And I loved having him out there because he was, he was just a red rag to offensive coordinator.
I love that. And you know what it is? My favorite ever DB ever is that Grimes that played for the Dolphins. Loved him. Loved watching that guy play. He's just a freak, absolute freak of nature. There's some of the things he could do. But anyways, I'm going off topic now. I'm talking about the NFL. I don't care. So what we're going to go into next is alignment rules and factors. So does anyone want to start the topic on this? I know, Wilf, do you want to chip in on this one?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about this and wanted to get some thoughts from the other guys. So, so I think alignment is obviously my kind of thing is what are the key determining factors of a defensive back's alignment. So watch Duncan's video or watch Pete's or watch John's. And in Duncan's video specifically, he talked about certain coverage, the DB will have a certain leverage. So not necessarily in terms of kind of vertical leverage as in depth away from the ball or the line of scrimmage, but more of a horizontal leverage. So is he inside or is he outside? And so I kind of want to know what the key factors were for determining that kind of leverage. And obviously coverage is one of them. But then there are also things such as receiver splits. So Duncan talked about cover 2 and how he wants his cornerbacks outside in cover 2. And I thought to myself, well, if the receiver's still on the sideline, are you still playing him outside? Or will he bump in there? Or is it, is it dependent on the level that we're coaching? And then kind of going along with that is the divider rules element of that. And basically what divider rule is it's a landmark on the field where if the receiver lines up outside of it, the DB will line up inside, and then vice versa. So if you're playing, let's say, cover 3, for example, you've got a deep third. Most of the time, you'll pretty much probably be outside leverage and off. And it isn't until that receiver gets really, really wide split that you may then start to align inside. So I kind of want to know what the other coaches thought about, whether they use those and how they determine their alignments.
Yeah, I think we don't really use the divider rule, like the divider rule as it's kind of written in books, because I think it's extra stuff that guys need to remember. So I kind of just go with we use divider rules more for like cover 1, cover 3 than for a cover 2, I would say. Yeah, we just say like wide, or is the receiver aligned wide, or are they aligned narrow? And it's partly where your help is, but it's also the kind of routes that they're going to run. So if the receiver is lined up quite tight, chances are they're not going to be running a slant. They're going to be running something that's going to be breaking out. So actually that outside alignment just gives you a head start on where they're going to be going. So we leave it a little bit more discretion rather than like having to get the old mental measuring tape and protractors out. It's more of just like go with what feels like it looks right for that situation. If it's a little bit wrong, we'll figure it out as we go along. But the cover 2 question was an interesting one, actually. And I think this is where you kind of get into the games of actually like playing against an offense. Like if we're running cover 2 and they start to split their wide receivers out wide, if we're doing it, okay, this is how you play cover 2, then actually, I would want the corners on the outside. Because if we start to cheat in, then we're just giving a really easy free release fade to a receiver out there. And as long as the QB can throw that ball, there's no way that's not being completed. But that's the on paper answer. If they're trying to split us out to do that kind of thing, I'm just going to change what coverage we're running. Maybe we run a cover 1 and we let everybody else just kind of go play football, or we play a cover 3 and we just say, okay, corner can bail off, and we'll give ourselves the support, maybe in that hook curl space. Because why are they doing that? It's either to throw the fade or to run the ball or do something inside, right? So we'd probably just change up what we're doing rather than try to figure out exactly how we would align to that sort of stuff.
Pete, you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, well, so for me, in terms of divider rules, and so following on from Duncan's point, right, rather than sort of, I think what Duncan was saying is like, giving players sort of autonomy over decision. It's more about problem solving, isn't it? It's a case of, look, you got 3 guys out there, you got 2 guys out there, and they're wide to the field, wide to the boundary. So why are you over in the hash when everything's over there? So in a cover 2, would you not move out a little bit and then get them to think about, if that's the danger and I've got a deep path and there's 3 guys over there, then clearly I've got to move over a bit to take away some of that threat or to help out the corner. And just in terms of alignment, I'm a bit weird probably. I ask my corners to go head up and take first step inside or outside. Occasionally I'll bend that rule if a player's struggling with that. But the way that I teach my first step of the corners is that first step should always be inside or outside, depending on what the coverage allows them to do. So if it's a 1, want them to step inside. Cover 2, want them to step outside, just to funnel that player into where all the help is.
Nice. And Will, what about you? You got anything to add onto that?
Yeah, I mean, like the other guys, sort of landmarks, we don't tend to use. I mean, mainly because on most Buffer fields, there's no landmarks other than, a yard line or something. So you can't really tell a player, look, I want you 5 yards inside the numbers or anything like that. We tend to play, we're heavily influenced by our our coverage, basically what's being called. That's what the guys are told is sort of should be behind any reasoning that they do on their alignments. So just as Pete was saying then, we want the guys to think about what they're doing. If they've got a deep zone or they've got the flat zone, what's going to allow them to cover that zone best of all? If they're inside, if they've got a massive inside shade, well then, and they've got a flat zone, then they're probably leaving 15-20 yards on the outside. So they've got to think a little more about what their overall responsibility is. I'm just following on from Pete. I'm more traditional in the sense that I prefer an inside or an outside shade. That's mainly because I think down to the players that I work with, I'm obviously more involved in sort of the younger side of the game, and my sort of philosophy with the kids especially is keep it as simple as possible. If we can take away one easy release, then let's just do that. And if as Duncan was saying, if they start then trying to out chess matches and move people out, then we'll look at adjusting and making things. But it's just about keeping everything simple.
I've got a question for Pete actually. When you're playing head up, what kind of depth are you playing off the line? How deep are the corners lining up when they're in their head up shade?
5 yards deep.
Okay, and what's your first step? Is it lateral, or are you kind of giving ground to make sure you can stay in the leverage that you want?
No, first step back, but it will be, so if it's cover 2, the first step back would be to the outside. So that if you're lined up head up and your first step is like that, you're automatically getting that funnel and that sort of shade up. So you're basically giving yourself that step to funnel the receiver into where you want them to go. So the natural example of that would be if you're in a cover 1 and you were head up on a receiver wanting to, fade up the sideline. If you take your first step outside to the sideline, they're really going to have to fight hard to get to the sideline to get past you. So you're almost making that wide receiver be lazy and take that obvious inside release, which is exactly where you want them to go, because then you're on their hip and you're with them all the way up the sideline.
But is there any problems with that development?
Sorry, what?
I was going to say, do you not find sometimes though that creates some hesitancy in your play because they've almost got to wait for that receiver to make the first move? So
because they're making the first step regardless, because that's almost, so if your starting point is to give them the shade, that's their starting point and their feet are flat. So for me, they're stepping into that and they're already moving. So they've already got some momentum. In my head there, I'm all like, for me, processing it obviously is like a non-expert like you guys are. For me, it sounds like you're trying to make the receiver think about it more than what the DB is. So he already knows what he's going to do. You guys know that this is where I want him to step, and that's your step no matter what, isn't it? So you're going to take that step on that set of coverage. So then you're making the receiver say, listen, we've got to go this way, or we've got to do it this way now. So here's the truism about brick ball, right? So a quarterback in brick ball will use motion to determine if we're in zone or in man. Okay, the wide receiver at no point is thinking, are they in man or in the end zone? They're going, I've got a route to run. And I hope J-Moss is watching this, because that's exactly what they're thinking. Okay, they're not thinking that, I'll beat him to the outside because I've got a fade. And his alignment is this because he's going to be in cover 2, and I can tell that because nobody's come across with me with the motion map. He's just running a fade. Well, speaking of J-Moss, here he is. No, I'm joking. He's not coming up. J-Moss mentioned last week in the wide receiver talk that they're basically licking their lips, rubbing their hands together if you guys go into press. What's your thoughts on that? Throwing the shade.
Press for me is very player dependent. If I've got I'm trying to think of a nice way of saying this, my less than best players, out there on the field, I will not be playing press. If their number one is 6'6" at 200 pound and run a 4.2 or something, I'm not playing press. And there may be whole games when we just don't press because the situation just does not lend itself. It's not something you can force. I mean, from a purely coaching point of view, from my position, I love press. I want to see my guys, shut down a receiver, take them out of the game, take them out to play, and get that whole swag going that, DBs need. But from a team perspective, yeah, let's sit in zone and let's let guys, come underneath us and, let's control the field. There's a time and a place for press, and I love it. I love seeing guys play really physical press. But yeah, there's a time and a place for it, and it's not an every play for me. It's not an every play thing.
Dunk, what about you?
Yeah,
sorry, Will.
No, crack on, Dunk.
I would say we're similar actually. We used to run a lot more press than we do now, and I think it's if you've got receivers who are good at getting off press, and I can remember us playing J Moss, and he's pretty good at getting off press. So, like for him, he's a receiver that can get off press, and if you've got a DB that press isn't their strength, then you're automatically putting your guy into a bad situation. But if you've got a defender who can play press really well, or is even more comfortable in press, then why not do it? Like from a couple of GB camps ago, we were repping cover 2, and Eddie actually said, "Oh, can we play some press?" I'm like, "Well, you get a better read if you're off because you're really trying to pick up that out route." He's like, "I can do it from press. Oh, give it a go." And sure enough, that's it, right? Some guys can do it, and some guys prefer to be off and play it better that way. So I think sometimes you've got to, like Will say, you've got to go with your personnel. But if you teach it in the right way and guys kind of take to it, then you can leave them in press, and that's something that they kind of build their skill around. Because if you do press well, it changes the dynamic of the offense. So yeah, use it where it makes sense, I think.
Wilf, I know you had something to add there, is that right?
Yeah, I think like Will said, there's definitely a time and a place for it. So I think for me, down and around the goal line is probably for me is the most common area. And that is just because the field is shrunk. And so I think when we talk about press as well, I think there's different types of press. I think at the moment, pretty much, obviously Duncan's just mentioned cover 2, but pretty much when we say press, I think that's kind of seen as press man, no help. And that's probably what J Moss is kind of referring to, where you get that corner up there and it might be, some single high coverage where he's press on the line and it's clearly a one-on-one. And if the receiver wins off the line, then it's, it's an easy touchdown. But yeah, around the goal line, there's obviously less field to defend. And so you don't really have to worry necessarily about them beating you over the top because, there's no room to put the ball in. But then I think there's also, like Duncan said, there's also elements of being able to play press in particularly cover 2, for example, where, I think that's a great opportunity to kind of beat up receivers like Will mentioned. And you're not on your own. You've got a responsibility. You're going to be press, outside leverage, funnel to the safety. And so you get that kind of best of both worlds where you can play physical, be up on the receivers, but then also, you're not one-on-one. And if you do kind of give up an outside release or don't do a great job off the line, you've still got help.
So what determines your depth for a DB? So if you've got a corner there, what is it that's determining how far DP is sitting? Is that like coverage dependent? How are you guys determining that?
Yeah. Can I jump in on this?
Go for it, Matt.
Yeah, I think coverage dependent, definitely. Situation on the field. Is it 4th and 2 from the 1 yard, 2 yard line? You're not going to play 10 yards off once you get inside the 10 because you're going to be sat in the end zone. They complete a pass in front of you. It's a touchdown. And then it depending on the coverage. Let's say we're playing man coverage, like cover 0 with no help. It's probably determined by the speed of the receiver that you're going against. So one thing Martin Hilton always used to say, did a couple of BAFCA convention talks, and one of his things was, what's your speed relative to the receiver's speed? So, if you're faster than the receiver and you're able to change direction, then why not go up and play press? because if he does get past you, you can recover. Equally, if that guy's a burner and you might not be, that fast, then play off, give yourself time, give yourself some space to work with, and kind of take a little bit less risk.
Anyone else got anything to chip in?
Yeah, absolutely. Coverage dependency is the key thing, and the reason that's one of the key things, and the reason for that is that each coverage you run is designed to take away something different. So your alignment, whether that's coverage or depth or leverage, needs to be so that you can take away the thing that you're on the field to take away. So if you're playing a flat, then you don't want to be lying 10 yards off because you're just leaving the flat wide open. So I think another part of that is what you're trying to take away, and that becomes influenced by all the things Will said, like down a distance and other situational things.
Pete, did you have something to say there?
Yeah, I was actually going to say something about press because you never got back to me about that, Adam.
Mate, you're lucky I didn't just remove you off the stream, if I'm honest, mate. So turning up in the wrong colour shirt and everything.
One of the things I was going to say about press, because it ties in nicely with what we're talking about here, is that actually for press to be effective, you don't even need to make contact. Okay, you just need to make the receiver think about contact, because the amount of times press fails because the defensive back reaches, and he reaches to make that press, and at that point he's dead. Whereas if the wide receiver backs off to miss the contact, DB's already got step right there. Okay, because the wide receiver is wasting time trying to go backwards. Now, if you put that into a situation in terms of the coverage that you've got, and you've got a press situation involved, your alignment changes very differently. Now, somebody mentioned goal line packages and wanting to be very much in a press situation there. Now, where press really doesn't work is against slant routes. And in goal line situations, you've got that opportunity for slants to happen. So one of the things in terms of putting my defensive backs heads up where I will change my rules is in that goal line situation, where I will take away the slant by deliberately aligning my DB inside in a press loop so that they have to work to the outside.
I like that one. But what about your depth of your DB? No, I'm joking, man. The reason I wanted to ask that question as well, if I'm honest, is I watched a clinic a few years ago with the old DC of the Pats. I think it might be the new DC of the Pats as well. Did he leave and then come back? But anyways, he was saying something that he was looking on tape of what his DBs were doing. He would change the coverage depending on what the quarterback was doing. So if teams were going under center, he would bring his DBs up closer to the line of scrimmage so they couldn't get that ball out quicker. If the QB was in the gun, they would drop them back a little bit so they've got more time to see what's coming. Do you guys do anything like that, or is it all just specific on what the full scheme's doing?
We just don't have time. I mean, we get one maybe 2 sessions a week. You just haven't got the time to be that, that detailed. It'd be great, but we need to get them doing the basics well, and and the basics are alignment, depth, and to be fair, even getting some guys to remember whether they're in man or zone. I mean, that's sometimes the level that we have with the players. So we just cannot go into that kind of detail, as great as it would be.
No, I get that. I do. We've had a question come in, so I'll read this out. It's quite a long one. What advice would you give to a 16-year-old already with 10 plus years of playing experience at wide receiver and DB, and was a GB under 17 squad member at 14 years old as a DB in 2019? He has the option of 5v5 or 9v9 this year. He would be an every down player and leader at under 16 and would probably be in rotation at under 19. I say play up for what it's worth. The nearer you can get to 11v11, the better. So what would you guys say to that?
Yeah, I'll jump in first. But yeah, being an under 16s head coach, and I help out with our under 19s occasionally as well. Yeah, step up. No one wants being a big fish in a small pond does not help you. You know, it doesn't matter if you can if you're 16 years old and you can dominate a 13-year-old. Well, you know, whatever. You know, you need to test yourself, and especially the step up is, you know, for under 19s. It's not just an age thing as well. It's suddenly you're moving onto a full size field. You know, you're now dealing basically with essentially a full offense. You know, most teams just only tend to have 3 on the line, so you're essentially dealing with a full count of running backs and receivers. So you're tending to start seeing more typical, you know, offensive schemes, you know, pass routes, and everything like that. And you're
going to love run tackling, mate. That's all you're going to do is reading the run, coming down and tackling. What team is this, Keith? Drop one line. What team it's at?
It'll be Charlie Bucks.
Is it Charlie Bucks? Is it?
Charlie, So you know, I'm sure the under 16s will. I know I would. I'd be so sad to see a player of that caliber go, but for his own benefit, you know, his own football progression, which is, after all, this is why we do it. You know, we want our players to progress. You know, he's got to move up and really start testing himself. If he's you know, he's been GB and everything like that under 17s, he will very quickly, I'm sure, fit into 9v9. And then it just becomes a size thing. You know, yes, you'll have a 16-year-old going against an 18-year-old or potentially a 19-year-old, and you know, that's just the way the game is at the moment. There's nothing we can do about that, but he needs to be able to test himself and see how he compares on a full-size field, and you know, how his skills translate.
I mean, is Keith the coach? I'm unsure with some of those coaches, or is Keith the parent? That's what I don't understand. So,
I think he's
Keith,
both.
Coach and parent.
Yeah. So I know he coaches down at Chorley. I think he's had a big role in the whole setup down there. But so he's the parent.
Put your parent hat on and just say, like, is your kid big enough to move up yet? Is he not big enough to move? If he's not big enough to move up yet, give him another year's development. I mean, we've got 15-year-old kids in our team that are like 6'4". Do you know what I mean? It's like, if we were in the States, they wouldn't be playing in this age group. Do you know what I mean? They'd be playing age groups up. So age isn't really a big thing. I would talk mainly on his development side of things. Is he like a developed player? Is he bigger than the rest of the guys? Is he not? Like, do it on a safety aspect rather than his playing ability, and just go from there.
Adam, are your 6 foot guys interested in coming to Edinburgh Napier at all?
No, mate. I think a couple of them are going to the States, and a few have applied at the NFL Academy in Bristol. So, but yeah,
safety net, right?
Yeah,
Number
mate.
2 on UCAS form.
I don't think they need a UCAS form where they're going, mate.
One thing to add to what Will said actually about that kind of competing is, I think a lot of times you see the guys who are just physically dominant at under 19 level, when they step up to senior, are actually less effective than the guys that perhaps weren't physically dominant at under 19 but were more technically aware and dominant. I think the guys that are used to being the biggest, strongest, fastest on the field, so it's like going college to NFL, isn't it, where everybody is that strong and everybody's that fast. I think so that, exactly what Will said, that challenging yourself and competing, I think, probably makes you a more well-rounded player than continuing to be the biggest, strongest, fastest.
Yes, Charlie Bucks. Thanks, guys. I'm the parent in this case. 6'1", 70. Get him moved up, mate. Move him up. He's fine.
Edinburgh Napier.
Nah, he'd be fine. I've lost track now. Completely gone. We'll go on to this one next, because we haven't got much time left, so we'll get on this. Do coaches still use O-line for run pass, or is this redundant with the use of RPOs? Let's go, Will. You can go first, mate. We've been leaving it at last normally, so you can go on this one.
Yes, to an extent. You know, we tend to just let our players sort of react more to what the wide receiver's doing, you know, especially if we're in man. You know, how many times do you have to tell DBs, don't look back, you know, your focus is on the hips of your receiver. But yeah, if we're in zone, it is certainly something we do a little at practice. We'll watch tape and we'll see if there's any obvious keys coming from the O-line, you know, high hat, low hat, whatever. But it's, you know, again, I don't like labouring this point, but So the quality of some of the teams we play is not necessarily the highest, and you can get guys going 10 yards downfield on a pass play, and vice versa on a run play. So you can't get an accurate, really key from an O-line for a lot of the time, unless you've seen something very specific on film that they repeat again and again. No, we don't tend to use the O-line that much from a DB point of view, anyway.
Wilf, what about you?
Yeah, I'm the same. I think a lot of it will probably be dependent on coverage. So we don't use a lot of traditional kind of spot drop zone. I know on Max's talk he mentioned kind of the coverage family, so where we use more of match concepts. So for us, we're going to key receivers and then relate to the routes depending on where they go, rather than drop to an area of the field. So yeah, we don't necessarily read the offensive line because it's not really relevant to what our coverage responsibility is. If we were playing a kind of a spot drop cover 2, drop to the flats or drop to the half, then we might do as a corner. If we're going to be the force defender, we probably need to know run or pass first. But yeah, I think RPO definitely does make it harder because, like Will said, even if you've got the best offensive line in the world, you're still getting a false key because Brit ball, yeah, we aren't getting great offensive lines and we're not getting clear reads. Is it high hat? Is it low hat, for example? But yeah, RPO just makes it that much more complicated because you can't be coming forward as a defensive back on a pass play unless you may be defending the flats as the corner. But certainly if you're a man coverage, you don't want to be coming forward on the snap. And so, yeah, for me, it's we key the receivers, but that's probably just based on our scheme.
Duncan, are you the same?
Yeah, pretty much. I think there's some situations where we would key the offensive line. I think where you've got like heavy formation, so you've got maybe 21 personnel, two backs and a tight end, and the safety's walking down, then they're going to keep something on the line. I think that's. But yeah, typically if the reads that the defensive back needs to make are on the receiver, then we'll have them read the receiver for the most part. And when it comes to RPOs, I think that's something you just need to prepare for in your game prep and have an answer to it in some form or another. And actually, we've found that we can take what we've had some success with taking away RPO more through alignment, recognition of a formation, and then alignment to it. So if they're running 3 receiver sets and they're in shotgun with an offset back, the back and the slot receiver are on the same side, then we're telling our safety or outside linebacker, whoever's got that kind of responsibility to apex, hey, sit off and play the pass. Or if you've got somebody who really knows what they're doing, fake like you're playing the run and then drop out for the pass, and that's where you can get pick sixes. So yeah, I think that's the that's how we'd look at the RPOs. But yeah, the basic reads I think stay the same.
Perfect. And Pete?
Well, for me and for all of us in the room, I think the one thing is, in a Brit ball level, the answer to this is no, just because of the inconsistency of offensive lines. But at a national level, we do get that opportunity to start coaching up that next level of read. And that's something that I really love, that opportunity to be involved in the national program. When you start coaching against an opponent where everybody's good, and everybody's off a certain level. And, I think all of us on the call tonight, that's probably the great thing that we really enjoy, is that, that equity of opponent really comes through. But, in a Brit ball level, I talk to my guys about SEPs, which is somebody else's problem. You cornerbacks don't get involved with the offensive line right now. You've got a fast guy to worry about. So let's do your job, and let the other guys focus on the box.
I like that. I'm going to use that, by the way. I'm stealing that from you.
I recommend it's copyrighted.
Nah, I'm taking it. Don't care. I'll find it. I'll find like a version from somewhere else that I could use. It's fine. We're going to wrap it up in a second. We've got one last question, okay? So it's more of like a can you explain sort of thing. This is like the one thing that I can teach at DB level because I love it. Absolutely love it. So can someone explain to me the in phase and out of phase and what that is for a DB? I'll let anyone decide who wants to take it. Anyone want to take it?
Who asked this question?
Me?
So
Where did you hear that?
out of phase relates to the defensive back's position in relation to the receiver. So are they matched with the receiver, or are they disjointed from the receiver? And the impact of that is whether you're, I say, allowed to play the ball. Max I think Max's interview with Simon, he talks about earning the right to play, to look for the ball. I say very similar things, actually. I think you only get to look for the ball when you're in phase. And if you're not in phase, you got to do everything you can to catch back up.
Yeah, I tend to use the I don't tend to use the in phase, out of phase. It's another thing that I find it confuses players. It's something else they have to think about. So I just try and simplify it down to hip. You know, if you can touch him, you know, if you can put your hand on his hip, his back, you know, you're with him and you can make a play. You know, you can look back for the ball when he does, or whatever the rules of the scheme allow you to do. But yeah, I mean, Duncan gave a great explanation of it, but I just try and make it a little simpler for the age group that I'm dealing with.
No, I get that. Pete, you got anything to add there?
No, I wrote it down because
you wrote it down.
Yeah, it's obviously one I've not used. So I'm joking aside. This is one of the things that we talk about. It's like, you know, football jargon. You know, it's one of the things I always talk to Simon Hatcher about. That something's called in phase, out phase. For Duncan, it is called something completely different, or you know, Will's using different terminology to explain the same thing. So, you know, if you're a defensive back coach out there tonight and going, I've never used this or heard of this before, don't panic. You know, it's jargon upon jargon, and we all have our own phrases for the same thing. You're doing okay if you've never heard about it before, because you're probably coaching it already.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Don't worry. Will, have you got anything to add on how to teach us?
No, I don't think so. I think it's been covered by the others, to be fair.
Perfect. So we're gonna wrap it up there because we've got to do a shoot a little bit early tonight for some things that's going on behind the scenes. It's really important, which I can't announce just yet, but you'll find out in the future. So I'd just like to thank you all for coming on. Thanks very much, guys. Really do appreciate it. And hope to see you all again soon. If you guys are watching, please do me a massive favor. Tag someone in here that you think can benefit from the talk. If you've got any questions, drop them in the chat and we'll try and get them through to the coaches. So thanks very much, guys. Do appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.